All right, welcome everyone to Education at Parallax, What's New, What's Next, and Discussion. With you today are me, I'm on the left, Andy Lindsay, our fearless leader, Aristides Alvarez, and Stephanie Lindsay, who does lots of work behind the scenes on our web and documentation. Today we will be talking about the live workshop lineup, followed by the using a recorded workshop to go at your own pace lineup. And the one thing that's new and interesting is the Python v3 editor, which is very different from what you've been using if you've been going along with our cyberbot or cybersecurity tutorials to date. Also, we have some things to tell you about changes with the servos. Rounding it out with new tutorials and what's coming next, some discussion about the partnerships and distributorships that we have. I think I'll find that interesting and definitely will be some fodder for the discussion and educator feedback that we'll have after the main presentation. For those of you following along on YouTube, here is a link to this slideshow, and I will go ahead and paste that. All of these, we've got the bit.ly, the QR code, and the main link. If you're watching on YouTube, this should also be below the video in the more info section. Copy, chat, paste. Okay, yeah, and that went to everyone. Good. All right. I would recommend saving that link actually, because there's a lot of links that you can follow from within the slideshow, and you may want to go. Some of you might be interested in revisiting some of the things that I demonstrate or talk about. So for upcoming events, here is the link to our upcoming online events. And we are also talking with several potential hosts for in-person workshops, which is something that's pretty exciting. We haven't done many of those since COVID started, so we're really excited about that, but they are still to be announced. So what's on our workshop page, which I'll show you right here, is all the online workshops, except for I did the wrong link there. I'll go back and correct that. So what I did actually was I have the wrong link here. It's going to learn.parallax.com. Fortunately, there's a correct link embedded in the image of the events page. And like I said, I'll correct the written link. So here's a list of our educator workshops. And so this one will be moving to past events after today. And then coming up in February, we have cybersecurity with the Python and Microbit. That's a workshop where we send you a couple of microbits to follow along as we go through cybersecurity lessons. Then later in the month, we have cybersecurity, a second session of cybersecurity with Python and the Microbit. Yes. And then in early March, we have the Arduino ShieldBot workshop. Then near the end of March, we've got the Cyberbot robot with the Microbit. And then in April, near the end of April, we have an electronics workshop with Python and the Microbit. So those are the upcoming Zoom events. Each one is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Most of them go from 3 to 4 p.m., although we do have one from 1 to 3 p.m. In early February, and then later in February, and all the rest of them are the 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. So that's hopefully after school ends for West Coast teachers. And then as we go east and get later in the day, it should be easy for everybody to make it to the workshop. Now, there's also an at your own pace version, and that's essentially, it's the same page, but you can go and look at the past events. See if I did it right here. Nope. Okay. So I'm going to go back to where I know I have a good link. Sorry about that. I will update those links. So if you look at past events, you'll see we did have a couple of events at the NICE K-12 Cybersecurity Conference near the beginning of December. But then earlier on, October, we have the electronics with Python and the Microbit. So this is a previous event. I want to show you how to go and make use of these resources. Because, for example, if you have ordered some kits, be it the electronics kit, or maybe the ActivityBot 360 or the CyberBot robot, any of these events, when you go to view event, and this is in the previous events one, you can start each video right from here at the top of the page, and there's 3 2-hour video sessions. Then at the bottom of the page is also the workshop presentation slides, and you can use all that to go along with in an at your own pace format. Also, what I did was I added I meant to add, oh, I see, it's on the next slide. Now, so that's one way to get to those events, but you can also simply pick them from this list. So these are the most recent workshops that we recorded on YouTube. And each one of these, if you follow the link, you will see a page with the video links and the workshop presentation slides. I'm going to back up a couple slides because I want to also mention that if you go to our events page and are looking at the upcoming events, and by the way, that's if you go to www.parallax.com, simply point at community and select events, and you'll get here. And if you are interested in applying for an upcoming event, having us send you the hardware and then attending and doing the hands-on PD workshop, when you follow a link to an upcoming workshop, you'll see the description similar to the previous workshops, but you'll also see an apply here. And this is where you'll go to follow, answer some questions, and then we'll determine if you're, if the workshop will be a good fit for you. So fill that out, submit it, and we'll more than likely end up seeing you at the workshop you apply for. Okay, so again, remember this slide, it's slide 6, because these are all the most recent workshops that we've done, and it should encompass any of the kits you might have ordered or a colleague of yours might have ordered and need a quick get up to speed with potentially before any of the upcoming workshops. Okay, next piece of news is that the Microbit Foundation, Microbit Education Foundation, has updated their Python editor. They now have a version 2 and a version 3. All of our tutorials were done with the version 2. So for example, if we were to go to learn.parallax.com and then go into, say, the CyberBot and look at maybe Computer Microbit Talk, you will end up seeing that all of the screen captures for the terminal, for example, are for the version 2 editor. And we go into great detail on how to, what to click, how to connect to the editor, how to open the serial terminal, and those kind of things. So there's a lot of support for the version 2 editor that is built into our website, and there's hundreds of pages and quite likely more hundreds of images that are going to need to be updated. So we are recommending that everybody who's following along with the tutorials simply stick with the version 2 editor. And so when you follow a python.microbit.org link, it's going to send you to the version 2 editor from our tutorials. And so make sure to, it's going to offer to have you go to version 3. And yeah, I reckon there's nothing wrong with version 3 at all. In fact, it's a great editor, wonderful improvement. But to make it easiest to go through the existing tutorials, stick with this version 2. Now, with that said, I thought you might be interested in seeing what some of the differences are between the version 2 and version 3. Any of the scripts that you do from our tutorials in either of these editors will work fine on the Microbit. The main difference is just that the instructions are written for the version 2 on the left. This is the version 3 on the right. Some of the fun things about version 3 are that they added a simulator. And so this script right here, which displays a heart and then the message hello, can be simulated. And that's a nice thing for students to try out a lot of their different scripts. It's also got built-in reference for some of the common things that you're going to do in a Microbit script. There's ideas with links to fun projects for students to try, and then information on the API. So for example, you can go to the Microbit API and see about the checking, for example, if a button is pressed or was pressed. Now, one thing that I think is really cool about this editor is when you're doing a more in-depth robotics project. So let's go to learn.parallax.com, and I'll just show you an example here of, down at the bottom of the chapters, there are some projects. And so let's say you're at the tail end doing Control Your Cyberbot with an infrared TV remote. And it's a pretty cool project. Point the remote at your Cyberbot and press and hold certain buttons, or pardon me, press certain buttons to make it execute certain maneuvers. Now, this particular project I wrote ahead of time. So here it is in the version 2 editor. And one of the things that you have to do is add modules. The Cyberbot module and the TV remote module are 2 modules that have to be added. And to see that they've been added, or to go and add them, there's a load save button, and you end up going to show files to see that TV remote and Cyberbot are indeed there. But that's as much as you can do. Now, if I instead, by the way, you can also hide and show these menus, and hide and show the simulator as well. Now, if I open that same script in the version 3 editor, one of the cool things is that you can go down to project, and it shows you the 2 scripts, or the 2 modules that were added to make it so that you can your Microbit can communicate with the Cyberbot and understand TV remote incoming commands. But here you can actually look at it. And thankfully, they made it not entirely easy to look at, because they're saying, hey, these things, if you edit them, they might not work the same anymore. But if you wanted to see inside the TV remote, you can go to settings, and you can select the allow editing third-party modules checkbox. And then now you can see exactly what's in the TV remote, or yeah. So this is the IR, or infrared remote, part of the module. And then here is the much larger Cyberbot module. Now, these are also fairly cryptic because the fewer characters, the smaller imprint it makes on the overall size of the script. But just wanted to let you know it was there in case you are inclined to look inside any of these modules. Okay, so great new editor. Looking forward to maybe this summer updating it for the new tutorials. I'm not sure on the schedule of that yet. For another piece of big news is that there are very small changes to the servos that the Parallax robots are using. The parts for the servo that we've had for 20 or so years are now all gone. And so we had to upgrade to a new digital servo. And here was the news article about it. And I'm waiting for the images to come up. And so what you'll see if you get a new robot, and you may have seen this, that these have started shipping, I think, in sometime last fall. So what you might see is the term digital. And this is mainly for tech support to indicate that, well, I mean, there's two things. First of all, it is a digital servo as opposed to the previous analog servos. And then secondly, we put the digital on there so that we could track any differences or concerns that customers have with the new digital servos. We don't expect there to be any, but we wouldn't want to have not done that. So these new digital servos are the same part number, and they are compatible with all the robots in which the original continuous rotation servos that have been in production for the last 22, 23 years. They're a drop-in replacement, though we do recommend, if you want to replace some old analog servos with some new digital servos, do both of them. That way you won't see any speed differences. There may be slightly more accentuated speed differences between the old analogs and the new digitals. So if you buy a pair that are from the same shipment, you're more likely to get a similar speed. The ActivityBot 360 is the exception to this. The Feedback 360 servo is still the only thing you'd want to use in the ActivityBot 360. And by the way, the Cyberbot, I put links to the tutorials. So for example, this is a link to the product, and then this is a link to the tutorial. And so the Cyberbot has a MicroPython tutorial. Bobot Robot has PBasic. The Arduino has Arduino C++. And then the SumoBot WX is programmed in Blockly-Prop. And the ActivityBot can also be programmed in either Blockly-Prop or standard C. And so these links will take you to the cover page of the tutorial. So these are all the chapters for the ActivityBot. Okay. Now, one other change that we have made is with the Cyberbot robot. For the most part, we are now shipping the Cyberbot robot with these neat new servos that do not require centering. So some of you who have experimented with the Parallax small robots have had your students use a screwdriver to adjust the servo before building the robot. With the Cyberbot, we're currently shipping with the factory pre-centered Parallax digital servos, and there's a difference in the part number. Now, so there's also been an update to the tutorial for putting together the robot. now we have the students identify their servos. And if it so happens that they have the newer servos that we're currently shipping, they can go to skip all the servo centering and just start building the robot. Whereas if they have either the current Parallax digital servo or its analog predecessor, which have labels that look like these two respectively, then they will continue connecting and centering. Quick note about the servo performance. There is, we went to great lengths to make sure that these servos work roughly the same as the original servo. So this blue curve right here shows the speed response of the original. No, I'm sorry. The green curve shows the speed response of the original servo. And if you see that it's a little bit steeper, closer to the, this is the zero, this is a speed, wheel speed on the left side. And then this is the control signal for the servo along the bottom. And 1500 is the 1500 microsecond pulses are what make all of these servos stay still after they've been adjusted, if they're the adjustable type. And some of the slight changes we made were that the new digital servo has a slightly wider deadband range, so that it's not quite as persnickety when you're using the screwdriver to adjust it. And then, of course, the one with the black curve here is the new pre-centered one. And it's got really the nicest transfer function, I think, of all of them. But really, there's very little difference between all of these. It's just that the original servo, the analog servo, the fact that the curve is closer here means that a change in the speed you were trying to tell it to take in this range is going to be changing more quickly and also not quite as predictably as the new digital servos. So that's a nice improvement. As you can see, their top speeds are relatively the same. Any questions on that before I move on?
Well, I have something to mention regarding all these new servos. Why we went digital? Why we have another servo? And the answer to that is supply chain disruption. We have been working even before COVID, I will say, and the supply chain disruption in parts going obsolete over the years. Like we say, we have been using servos for more than 20 years. So eventually it was easier to find replacements for parts being obsoleted, and lately it was not so easy. So what we have been doing is we don't like to make changes. Any change we make, sometimes it would change the curriculum, thousands of pages, all these images, and it will affect.
And teachers saying, hey,
teachers.
Something changed and I wasn't expecting it.
And then you have half of the classroom, following one PowerPoint and the other following a different one, because it gets really complicated and really hard on the teachers. It just makes more work for everybody. So over the years, and more recently over the last year, we have been working hard. You can see how close those curves are on that graphic to that's two different suppliers, two new versions of Servo that they can be manufactured right now, replacing a servo that we use for 20 years. So there were some minimal changes. If you are running a PowerPoint, you can probably use all the same material that you have been using for a while. Yes, if you are running a robot, we prefer to have both of the motors should be of the same, both digital or both the same stock code. That way you get a more even behavior, and it was more in a straight line. But this is just one of the parts that we had to deal with. when they told us that we were not going to have servos for a year, for example. That means you wouldn't get, you get the funds, you apply for a grant, or you have some funds from the school, you want to buy the robots because you finally got the funds, and we wouldn't have robots for a year. So we did all these adjustments and changes, so we never ran out of stock. And we have plenty of inventory all the time. We try to have the material in stock by the time you need to place an order, you are ready to start the classes, you should be able to get the hardware. So, and that's why we did all these adjustments.
Oh, thank you, Ari. And yes, this this is one example of the great lengths that we've had to go to during the supply chain crisis in order to make sure that things were available as much as possible. There were certain things that were beyond our control, like for a while there were dry spells where microbits were unavailable, but that more about that coming up.
Mm-hmm.
As far as new tutorials, what I wanted to bring to your attention is, since we're having folks continue with the version 2 editor, I've noticed that if we go, I'll show you real quick. So saving a file happens by clicking the load save button and then downloading the hex file, and opening is right here. So it's not exactly as intuitive as it is in the new editor, where you have a save and an open button right there. And that in mind, what we did was set up a page that takes you step by step, takes the students step by step through how to name their script, save it, and reopen it. So that's an important one in the prerequisites section here of cybersecurity and the Cyberbot robot. Another thing we did is we took the relevant tutorials, the tutorials related to cybersecurity where it was just the microbit being used, and we made a microbit only version of the larger Cyberbot offering. So like here's the Cyberbot offering, and you'll see some cybersecurity chapters down here after the main navigation chapters. We took the cybersecurity material that was microbit centric and put it on a separate, basically made a separate book for it. And so these are all the chapters. There are a couple of chapters where at the end, the robot will do something, but there's a lot you can do in the tilt control chapter, for example, with just the microbit and learning about accelerometers and tilt control and the physics and math behind it. Another thing that's coming up, should have been here by now. Sorry about that, everyone. I didn't manage my time quite well enough. I intended to announce that this was now available, but it's very close to done. And so this is the potentiometer chapter in the electronics for the microbit, the what's a microcontroller for the microbit. And there's very, very little I have left to do, but I still have to clean up a couple of areas before we publish this to the website. So for anybody who wants to use it as is, there's not much missing there. The support is primarily there so that students can learn how to, for example, plot their potentiometer voltage on a oscilloscope. Really cool activity. And there's lots more in here. Potentiometer controlled servos, potentiometer controlled lights, potentiometer controlled, oh, let's see. I wanted to say sound, but I don't think I did potentiometer controlled sound. Lots of good material here, and it will be on the learn.parallax.com site shortly. But in the meantime, here is a link if you want to use it. Another thing, at the NICE K-12 cybersecurity conference that I mentioned earlier, I noticed that malformed packets attacks and defenses is a very low hanging fruit, because what we have are a bunch of applications that have been set up for students to try and then to protect against other attacks. And we also have most of the groundwork for dealing with malformed packet attacks with the microbit, because part of the prerequisites are exceptions and exception handling. And so what we can show is simply how a few of those existing applications that they've done in other chapters can be broken by simply sending a message that's not the right data, and how to protect against that, primarily with exception handling. So that's coming up. And then another thing on the horizon is that we're thinking about publishing projects for the Microbit electronics kit. It's called the What's a Microcontroller with Python and the Microbit kit. So here is all the small circuits, or many of the small circuits that are in the kit, in a larger application, potentiometer included. But another thing that can be done with the breadboard are some really interesting projects. And so I wanted to throw this out here as part of the after presentation discussion. We have things like moisture probes and distance sensors and pressure sensors and liquid level and environmental sensors that can tell you temperature, humidity, and whatnot. And these are just a few examples of the many cool things that could be connected to this microbit and used. Joysticks. Obviously, we have a servo already. There's also a continuous rotation version of that servo. So there's some neat things that could be done. And so we'd like to hear from you about what kind of things might fit in your class if it was extending the circuits with the microbit kit. And with that, I think I'd like to pass it to Ari to talk about distributorships and
supply chain again.
Yes.
I get to talk about that all day long. So yeah, so over the last years, as you saw in the presentation, the amount of curriculum, all these different projects that we develop, we have a lot of history working with Microbit. For example, when Andy was showing the version 3, how Microbit locked those libraries, so the students wouldn't change them by mistake, and then the programs don't run anymore. That's actually feedback we provided when they were in the beta version, and they actually added that step to prevent students, damaging those modules, and then a perfect code wouldn't run anymore. So we have been working with them for years, and last year we became like a channel partner. So we are distributing more microbits. They do have, like everybody else, supply chain issues. They had to release versions of the microbit, like the latest version 2.2, replacing parts they can no longer find. And we have been working with them trying to make sure, like I said, for us to supply educators, we need to make sure that we have the material when you have the funds. You are not controlling the time. You don't control, when you get the funds and when the classes start. That's a fixed date, and if we don't have the kids when the classes start, we have problems. And sometimes some of the funding for schools is you get the funds and then you have a deadline. If you don't spend that money by that date, you cannot buy later. So we have to have the material. So maybe you can go to the next slide. One of the things we did was increasing our inventory on Microbit. So we will just apply to buy ahead of the curve more Microbits. And we put the kits together in inventory. We try to stock up the microbits allocated to the robots, so what's a microcontroller with Python, or the class packs. And whatever we think we can manage to sell individually, we sell as Go and Club kits. Those are the kits that come from Microbit. But just to give you an idea, right now we are out of the bulk. At the time of we are doing this video, that's January 24th, we are out of the bulk, which is the bare Microbit, just the Microbit itself. The Go kits we have 8,500. That's plenty, and we have 5,000 more. So if you watch this video, probably in a couple of weeks, we'll have more than 10,000 Go kits. We have about 300 club kits. Those are the 10 packs. So what we are doing is, trying to have a safe amount of inventory there. So when you need to place those orders, the kits are there. And this relationship evolved from Parallax being a strong customer. Also, as far as I know, we're one of the customers that pushes the limits of the microbits. Most of microbit customers are more elementary school. We are usually offering for middle and high school. And we do projects that really push the limits of the microbit. So the Microbit Foundation really likes to work with us to see how much they can pack on that microbit that not everybody will use, but we will. And that makes, the robots that you run in the classroom more powerful. So this official relationship title, the channel partner, came last year. That's a new thing that we are doing, and it's working really well. We are also helping develop new versions of the kits. And it came after we used them for years. Now, we have a new relationship also that we just signed up. And this approach was a little different. This is, we got into the relationship first and signed the agreement, and now we are looking, and this will be part of the discussion after this recording is over, is we are approved resellers, are working closely with Raspberry Pi, but we have not made any kits yet. And even though Raspberry Pi now has a microcontroller, it's a Raspberry Pi Pico, they are mostly like a computer, Linux-based computer company. We usually work with our own microcontrollers, Arduino, or even Microbit. So usually we are more in the microcontroller curriculum section. So we are adding this partnership, and we are looking into teachers and schools. I don't know what you are doing. Some of you may be using them. I would like to hear what you are doing with them, what kind of kits you need to make. And if we can go to the next slide. We are just barely starting stocking the Raspberry Pis in the middle of this supply chain disruption. They are really struggling to get the Raspberry Pis manufactured. Like right now, we have probably 800 Raspberry Pi 3 A plus, a little scroll, that one. Raspberry Pi 3 Model A plus. Those we do have in inventory. That's the only one pure Raspberry Pi that we have, 850 units. But we carry the Raspberry Pi 4 in different sizes of RAM, 2, 4, 8. Also, we carry the Raspberry Pi 400, which is a keyboard that includes the Raspberry Pi. Is there on the upper right. Now, in our online sales, the supply is so short on Raspberry Pis that ordering through the website, we have a limit of 2 units per order. But if you are a school and you want to use Raspberry Pis, the limit doesn't apply to you. You just cannot order online. You need to go through our sales department via email or call. You can issue a PO from a school. You need 200 Raspberry Pis. You need 500. It doesn't matter how many you need. We will be able to work with Raspberry Pi to make sure you get them. So that limit of 2 per customer doesn't apply to schools. You just need to let us know that you need them, and we will work hard with Raspberry Pi to allocate those. This supply chain disruption for Raspberry Pi is expected to last probably another year and a half, until you can finally order them when you need them. But for now, we need to do a little extra planning. So then, other than supplying just the Raspberry Pis, there's a couple of kits that we have in stock. That's for the Propeller users. It's not educational usually. That's Propeller multi-core customers. But for schools, this is brand new to us. We just need to hear from you. How do you want to get these Raspberry Pis? How you use them? What kind of kits we can put together for you?
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to add in a a bullet point about
Oh,
2
unlimited.
per
Yeah,
online.
unlimited for schools or something like that.
Yep. Okay. And all right. So then next up, we're just about at the end of the presentation. And so after the recording stops, I'd like you, we have some time to talk, and these are some of the discussion topics that we came up, but we're interested in hearing from you about whatever you see as something that is relevant. But here are some topics that we came up with to try to seed the conversation. The first is microbit kits. So that has to do with the idea of adding projects to the circuit kit. Then what do you have in mind, or what would you need for your classroom in terms of a Raspberry Pi educational kit, as opposed to the Propeller 2 kits that Aristides mentioned? In general, are there any lessons and or resources you wish we offered? We want to hear about that so that we can try to plan things in as needed. I have a bullet about the in-person workshops. If there's anybody interested in hosting one, it's a lot of work. I'll tell you that ahead of time, but there may still be some slots open for in-person workshops, and we can talk about that also even after the work that this time. You can basically email us at education@parallax.com. We'll also talk about any needs you might have for supporting new programming languages, and just an open discussion. All right, so before we stop recording, here is how to get a hold of us, including the educator hotline, education@parallax.com. Those are our 2 main educational, well, and then of course sales. Those 3 are going to be your main resources. There are additional resources at forums.parallax.com, and then we also have a Facebook. So thanks for coming, everyone. Please do stick around for the discussion topics that I just went over. This is the end of the recorded presentation. For those of you watching on YouTube later, thanks for watching.